Welcome back to episode 2. My name is Jessie, taking a Alive-Rencountre. I'm the host of the show called Born from the Stars. Again, Born from the Stars is my Lakota name. Born from the Stars woman is how we say it in our Lakota language, is Wichach Bitumpiwi. And today's topic is very dear to my heart, especially in the climate that we have going on right now in our country. And I'm going to be talking about this old ancient Lakota phrase, and how we say it in our language is Midakoye Awase. And what that means when we say this, and it's so beautiful that we sometimes will utilize it as a prayer in itself, and sometimes we put it at the end of our prayer. And what it means is we're all relatives. We're connected, we're related, we're one. And when we say this, it reminds our spirit that everything that is living is a relative. And so this book that I created called We Are All Related, and the subtitle Midakoye Awase, was my second book that I put out. And originally it was meant for little kids. People asked me after my first book, you should make a little kid, book, Jessie. And I thought about it. I was like, well, maybe I should turn the first book into a little kid version. I didn't know what to write. Well, this book came to me. Again, if you listen to my first episode, how that first book came as a spiritual experience, this second book came as well, and another spiritual experience. And, we all remember the pandemic when that happened, and how everybody was at home, unless they were an essential worker, and everybody was at home working from home. Kids were at home, they were doing online school and such. And me being a school counselor at that time, I was at home as well too. And, I took a nap during the day, and something happened that, usually would happen to me every once in a while since being a kid. And if you've never experienced it, what is called the sleep paralysis, if you've never experienced it, it's where when you're sleeping, you try to wake up, but it feels like your body's frozen. You know exactly what's going on around you and what people are saying and such, but you can't move, you can't talk, you struggle so much to wake up, to move your body, but you can. It's almost like impossible. And that first started happening to me probably when I was about 8 or 9 years old, and I didn't know what was happening. Over the years, I started experiencing it more and more, and there's probably a medical reason for it, but I believe spiritually that it's an opportunity for the spirits to come and connect with you and such. And that's what happened to me over the years. Well, this particular day back in 2020, it probably was about late April, early May or so. I was napping at home, and I was laying on my bed, and I could see this woman coming down the hallway, and I knew, I was like, oh my goodness, here we go again. Here is another sleep paralysis experience. I don't know what's going to happen right now, but the former me, the older Jessie of me version, or older version, I guess you can say, I was terrified of sleep paralysis because I didn't know what message was going to come. I didn't know what experience I was going to have. Sometimes I've had people come, or spirits come, and touch me on my forehead right between my eyes or my eyebrows and such, or touch my foot, or they'll talk to me and give me messages. And, I used to be a big scaredy cat, and I hated it with a passion every time that would happen. So I try to learn how to holler or make noises in my sleep to have my husband or one of my daughters wake me up, and they're all trained now. If this happens, go wake up Jess or mom and shake her or whatever hard enough to get up. And I was sleeping by myself in my room, and everybody else was in the living room or in the dining room, kitchen, and so nobody could hear me. And I saw this woman coming down the hallway, and I was like, oh my goodness, here she comes, here it happens, here we go. And this woman had long black, beautiful hair. And she was coming down the hallway, and I was like, oh my gosh, trying really hard to wake up, trying my hardest to holler for anybody to come and wake me up. And she comes into the room, and she bends over the bed, and she's on my left ear here. And she starts talking, and she gives me word for word a story for a book. And when she's done, she tells me, now wake up and write. And this like very loving, but kind of like almost stern auntie energy. And I was like, oh my gosh. And I woke up and I like stumbled down the hallway to my husband, or I was still half awake. And I was like, oh my gosh, I just experienced sleep paralysis and you'll never believe what happened. I shared with them what happened. And I told them what she shared with me in word for word. And I said, yeah. And she told me, wake up and write. And he's like, well, write it down. I was like, oh no, I'm going to remember. He's like, no, write it down, like right now. I was like, okay, I will. And so I did. And that actually became my second children's book, and is a very simple book, but the message is universal for all ages, all cultures and such. And, I'm a huge believer that we already know how connected we are, that we already know that there's one creator that has made all of us. What else could be so beautiful that can make me, that can make you, that can make a tree, that can make a tiny little beetle, that can make the ocean and the beautiful grandmother earth and the galaxies and universe and such. What else is so beautiful? Right? And it was really weird because at the time there was a lot of tension that happened shortly after. And then I realized this is why she came. The whole incident in Minneapolis that happened with one of our relatives, George Floyd, happened. And there was an uprising of frustration of voices of all over the country that were happening in different cities and towns about justice, about, people wanting to be heard that, hey, we got to treat each other better than this, right? And that moment I realized this is why she came. This is the reason for this book, is to remind us, not to teach us, because like I said, I believe we're all born with this knowledge. And as we grow older, we start to learn to fear what is different than ourselves. Different skin color, different religion, different languages, different cultural beliefs, different political beliefs. We even start fearing different imaginary lines on grandmother earth of like, oh, this person was born over there. Oh, there must be scary, right? Or whatever it is. And we start learning that different is scary, which is not. Different is beautiful. And I always try to teach kids this, whether it was as a school counselor when I had that hat, or whether I'm working as a presenting author when I go to schools. I always teach kids that it's so beautiful to be different, because think of all the people in the world, almost 8 billion people, and there's one of you, one. And so I knew that I had to make this book, and I made it just shortly, like probably a few months afterwards. And it was my very first self-published book, and I stumbled through it and such, but I was able to get it done. And it's a very simple book, like I was saying, but the message that she taught, that she brought with her, was powerful and a beautiful reminder that everything that is living is a relative. Every person that you come across, no matter how different they appear, is a relative. And we all come from that same loving, beautiful creator. And so even though when we see people and they're acting out of fear or anger or whatever it is, and they treat people badly, and this is hard to believe because when we experience it at the time, but creator still lives in them. It's not creator that's making them act this way, but creator still lives in them, and they are part of the same creator that we all come from. And it's when we can go back to that knowing, that wisdom that we're born with, it becomes really easy, almost second nature, to have kindness and compassion and love for everyone and every living thing. But we forget about this teaching And we start to desecrate, as humans, desecrate Grandmother Earth, to mistreat animals, we forget that this home, this temporary home, also belongs to the four-legged, to the winged nation, to the tiny crawlers, the beetles and such. And so we get so caught up in looking at differences and fighting about what language or what country or whatever it is right, that we forget that we're all from the same creator. And that this life, this physical life, these, I like to say, avatars, these bodies that we're in are temporary. And I always say, even if we were to live to be 100 years old, it's still a small, small sliver of what we know as time to be here. And our goal should always be to leave this place better than before we came. Whether that's taking care of Unchimaka, our Grandmother Earth herself, in a better way, or whether we're not necessarily just teaching or preaching kindness and compassion, but we're living that every single day within our families and our communities and wherever we go, right? And what that honestly, I believe, starts with is love for ourselves. If you listen to our first episode on the lights, right? When we have bright lights, it's easy to be a good relative. It's natural to be a good relative. When we have that self-love and that self-compassion for ourselves, and we remember where we all come from, then wherever we go, whoever we come across, we're going to only be able to show love, kindness, and compassion, right? So it all starts within here, how to be a good relative. So when we say treat others good and such, we're also saying start with yourself. Start by being a good relative to yourself. And one thing that I always like to just recently put myself in check with is, and I'll try to catch myself if I'm ever thinking of self-defeating thoughts, negative thoughts about myself, right? What if everybody could hear my thoughts about how I'm thinking about myself? What if these thoughts turned into words on how I was treating other people? And then it stops me in my track. And I'm like, nope, change that narrative, Jess. Because if I can't treat myself with kindness, compassion, and love, how am I going to do that to other people? How am I going to be able to have kindness, compassion, and love for other people when I go and other living relatives, when I go and I meet them amongst them, right? And so when we take a look at our world, and we all know that there's a lot of sad things that happen in our world. There's a lot of people that carry hurt, that have dim lights, right? We see them, we feel their actions and such, and the humanness in us wants to react, and we want to hurt them back. We want to make them cause as much pain as they did to us. But when we can stop and reflect and think about it from a spiritual realm, because remember, we are spirits first, then we realize, oh my gosh, I can't treat them back the way they treated me. I need to have compassion for them and ask myself, why are they acting this way? Why are they acting this way? And what can I do to change this energy? Yes, it's healthy to put up boundaries. I'm going to do that because that's self-love as well too, right? But if I go back and I retaliate, I'm just as wrong, because I'm putting that negative energy out there to the universe, out here to our world. And so it's important for us to, no matter what, always be a good relative. Always treat others how we would want to be treated. I know we've heard that as kids, and we teach that to kids. Treat others how we want to be treated, right? And sometimes we kind of put it in the back of our mind, like, okay, that's something we teach little kids. But as adults, do we actually live by this, right? When somebody has wronged us, are we able to look at ourselves and say, okay, I want to forgive them because I don't want to carry this. I don't want to carry this hurt and pain and such. And when we carry hurt and pain and it turns into resentments, and we think that by not talking to that person or by treating them mean is going to hurt them, it actually hurts ourselves the most. Because I like to do this example with kids when I talk to them, especially like middle school, high school kids, is, imagine, taking your fist and I tell them, like, hang on to it until I tell you you can stop. And so I start talking some more, and after a while, you see their uncomfortable faces after like a minute or 2 minutes, or sometimes I've even gone like 3 minutes of telling them not to let go. Make sure you make a tight fist, right? And I said, okay, now I want you to pay attention to your fist. Does it hurt? And of course they all say, well, yeah, it does hurt. Oh my gosh, my hand hurts. Gosh, Mrs. Rencountre, or whatever. And I say, well, that represents the anger and the resentment that we have towards others, thinking that we're going to hurt them. But in actuality, it's hurting ourselves, right? So when we forgive people for the wrong things that they have done and such, we're doing it for ourselves. So we don't have to carry that energy. We can release that. We're not forgiving because we think that what they have done to us is okay, because it's not. We're forgiving because it's hard to carry that. It's hard to carry that energy of resentment and anger. So whoever it is that has done you wrong, forgive them. And you don't even have to tell them it, if you don't want to. But in your hearts, tell them, I forgive you, and then release it. And actually do release it. So don't carry that, because when we hang on to that, it prevents. So imagine this, I'm hanging on to it and I have a fist. And if I'm busy hanging on to this resentment and anger, I'm going to have a hard time being able to be available for more blessings coming in to my life. I'm going to have a hard time utilizing my gifts, right? So if I'm hanging on to something in my hand, I can't use this hand, right? I can't use it to do things for myself or other people because I have this fist and that's closed. But when I can release it and let it go, I'm free to be able to utilize my gifts and help other people, help myself as well too. So being a good relative, starts with us. It starts with doing that inner work of compassion for ourselves, forgiveness for other people, also, forgiveness for ourselves as well too. And especially the most important is to have unconditional love for ourselves, because when we do this, then we can role model that to other people as well too. And I work on this a lot. I like to go, especially during the nicer days in the mornings, I like to go walking on this bike path that we have here in town. And, sometimes I come across people that are coming from the opposite direction, and I see some of them that are really happy, and they'll greet me and they'll say good morning and so forth. And then I come across people who are really crabby, walkers or bikers or whatever. And when I tell them good morning and they don't answer back, and I'm like, that's okay. It's fine. I'm not taking that personal. And I just know that I have compassion enough for these people that, gosh, they must be going through something really difficult right now in order to be that angry, right? And so I just have compassion. One day I had this, like a download come to me, like a poem. And I don't remember the exact words of it, but it went something like this, because I came across so many people that morning on the bike path. It went something like this. Today, I saw God. I saw God in the man that walked by me who had lonely eyes. An older man, lonely, long life, who had aged skin on his face and a look of loneliness. Today I saw God and the woman who rode by me with angry energy, riding by on her bike, not telling me hello or responding back to my kind smile. Today I saw God in the lady who sat at the picnic table, a houseless lady who had the aged signs of loneliness, worry, stress on her face. The houseless relative, as she sat there working on what I'm assuming jewelry to sell. Today, I saw God in the trees that I passed by, in the creek, the water that I walked next to. Today, I saw God when I got home and when I looked in the mirror. And then I realized that God lives in all of us. Good days or bad days. God is in every single living thing. And it made me cry when I had this download of this poem of Today I Saw God. And when I put those lenses on, it helped me have so much compassion for everyone that I came across. It had me had so much compassion for the trees that lived. As I walked by, I saw the energy in those trees, and the dogs that walked by. Everywhere I looked, God was there. Even in the people who seemed angry and mean, God was in them. And it doesn't mean that their actions represent God's love. It still meant that God was a part of them. And so when we can put those lenses on, and when we can see that, it helps us become a better relative. It helps us realize that God is everywhere and that we can have love for everyone. So when we say be a good relative, let's start with us. Let's start with being a good relative to ourselves first, having that love, the compassion, and such, and forgiveness for ourselves first. Because when we can carry ourselves with that energy, then we can be a good relative to other people. And so with that, I want to end by reminding all of us that we all have lights to help others shine with their bright, beautiful lights, but also, again, don't ever be afraid to let your own light shine. Because when we do this, we give permission for others around us to allow their light to shine bright as well too. And with that, I'm going to say, Midakuye Awase.